serving officers, veterans, NCC cadets, students of various schools, ladies and gentlemen, people from the media, people from the academia, a very good morning to all of you. And let me begin by saying that it gives me great pleasure to be here at this Chandigarh Literary Festival. I've been asked to speak on heartland and dreamland parts in multi-domain warfare and India's strategic centrality in the emerging world order, partly alluded to by General statement in his opening remarks. I found this to be a very, very interesting kind of a topic because it combines the geographical location of a state in the context of its strategic importance and then extends it towards modern warfare. The subject is not only academic in nature, but also highly relevant, considering that geopolitical events which are unfolding in front of us and the technological transformation the world is seeing. The subject actually, if you have a look, is largely geographic, although the Chandigarh Lit Festival focuses only on history. And let me say that it's saying that we don't mind that people who don't understand the geography will find them condemned by history. Geography has shaped human evolution and military planning since antiquity. An ancient Greek scholar, Herodotus, had said that all history must be treated geographically and all geography must be treated historically. There is a close connect between the two. We also know that what is present today, including this particular seminar, is likely to be history tomorrow. So in fact, what we are doing is every day creating a future history. So the classical doctrines of Mackenzie's Heartland, Chanakya's Mandala, and the geographical realities expressed in the doctrine of Mahan have sculpted destinies and defined the reaches of empires. Even in the present era, a Marshall, in its famous book, Business of Geography, said that the world map is not simply a canvas of borders, but a cartography of ambition and then constraints. For over a century, the struggle for global power has been, in essence, a struggle for control of geography. The seas, the continents, the skies. And if you look at today's context, it extends towards space, cyberspace, and cognitive domain. The location of nation states and its physical geography determines the ability to project power and exercise strategic options beyond its size. Look at two small nations, Djibouti at one end and Singapore. Both lie at Bab el Mandeb and Strait of Malacca, which are not only strategically important but also important for trade. Similarly, have a look at our nearest maritime neighbor, that's Indonesia. The number of states which connect the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, that is Sunda, Lombok, Malacca, and Ombiwata, all pass through there. So not only Indonesia can exercise influence over trade which passes through these important states, but also in case of conflict, it should be able to control overseas and undersea traffic passing these borders. Coming to some specifics of heartland and hinterland stories, geopolitical dominance, I believe, can be exercised to control over continental landmarks or through maritime space. Alfred Mahan's seminal work on influence of sea power upon history, the heartland theory of Mackenzie, and Spikeman's dreamland theory, they all have to be seen in the context of the time when they were actually written. The first one actually was Alfred Mahan's. When he wrote his influence on sea power, that was at the beginning of the 19th century, and he advocated that greatness and prosperity are effectively related by sea power. He argued that command of the seas and the arteries of commerce dictate the fate of powers, right? And he gave examples of the Britain's control of outposts to the American command of the two oceans. This was followed by, we all know, the Mackenzie's heartland theory, and he suggested that the control of Eurasian coast, which spread from Volga at one end to Yangtze on the other, Himalayan mountains to the Arctic, anyone who controls that particular space would control the world. He actually said, allow me to recall what adage he used was, that who rules Eastern Europe commands the heartland, who rules the heartland commands the whole island, and rules the world island, one who rules the world island commands the world. This particular saying encapsulates strategic imperatives of consolidating continental mass and resources. So basically, Mackenzie relied on mass and security, where consolidation and control decided land power. A spike-bend theory, which was presented almost about half a century later in 1942, posits that control not of the continental interior, but of the coastal arc that emanates from Europe to Middle East to India. Control of that particular area is important, and anyone who controls the inland will be able to control the world. Between the three men, Mahan, Mackenzie, and Spikeman, they created a triad of geopolitical wisdom, with Mahan emphasizing on the logic of sea power, Mackenzie highlighting land power, and Spikeman giving us a balance between these two. Let me conceptualize these two theories in the context of India and the immediate adversaries, that's Pakistan and China. So ancient India possessed sufficiently all kinds of resources, and probably that's why we developed kind of an insular outlook. India was very well protected by the Himalayas, mighty Himalayas in the north, and the Indian Ocean region towards the south. So India's culture, religious beliefs, and its doctrine of peaceful coexistence that spreads through the passes of Hindu Kush and the Himalayas to the north and across the Indian Ocean to Southeast Asia, and this all traveled through travelers, traders, and teachers. There was no physical conquest involved. India's political subjugation also came through the same openings in the Hindu Kush and by the discovery of sea routes to Asia. History tells us that for the long-term security of India, India will have to have both a continental as well as a maritime outlook. However, if you look at the geopolitical events of the 28th century, India's partition, the coming out of Pakistan, war with China, forced India to have a continental kind of an outlook. But if you have a look at India's geography, I think it tells us that India is both a continental and a maritime power. So we are a continental power because of a huge landmass. We are a continental power because a large amount of our population resides in the heartland. We are connected to the Asian landmass physically. We are a kind of a maritime power because of a peninsular shape jutting out into the Indian Ocean region. We have two island territories on the flanks, which provides us a huge amount of depth and security to the mainland. And if you have a look at the large number of countries which are resident powers in the Indian Ocean region, most of them are small litorals or countries which are on the east coast of Africa, also significantly small. So India enjoys a predominant kind of a place in Indian Ocean region, and hence we are always the first responder, preferred partner of choice for any other country. So therein lies the importance of India being both maritime as well as a continental power. It's a quirks of history actually, which has made us look towards the continent, and yet it is the same continental landmass which actually hinders our growth. In the sense, if India wants today, it can't travel west. Even if we wanted to send aid to Afghanistan to the overland route, it's not possible. We can't travel north because Chinese are there in Tibet, and we can't travel east because Myanmar is perpetually embroiled in some kind of an ethnic kind of a conflict. So if we can't travel for trade anywhere else, then the only way left for us is towards the ocean. So if you have a look, India actually is like an island nation. So we only can look towards the seas, and I think the long-term future, the destiny of India will lie in the seas and not on the continental landmass. Let's have a look at what does China's geography say to us. China, again, like India, presents a geography which is both continental and maritime in nature, and it's got huge continental depth and access via Pacific to the east and south China Sea. So it's, in fact, because of the geographical distribution of population actually Chinese, unlike India, that's largely on the coastal region. So China could be called as a inland power and a continental power. So, and as I talked about their human geography, which is largely concentrated towards the coastal areas, the coastal areas are also far more prosperous. They are known as the golden coast compared to the hinterland. However, if you look at historically, China has always looked for trade through the land route and not through the sea, except on one occasion where Admiral Zhang actually traveled to the Indian Ocean region. Another case in point is the fabled Silk Route. If you have a look, that was again from the Tang Dynasty. Actually, they looked at the overland routes to trade through Central Asia and to Eastern Europe. China's coastal development is vulnerable if you have a look geographically because it is ringed by countries like Russia, Japan, Philippines, and Taiwan. And this kind of constraints its maritime ambition. The articulation of 9-dash line or the 11-dash line in South China Sea and the militarization of artificial islands are a response to these vulnerabilities. It is a sort of China to overcome these constraints of geography and establish maritime dominance. In fact, China really focuses on development of navy. It also is an indicator that this is a geographical challenge which they particularly face. And hence, China is always looking at rearwards. The BRI initiative to land route development of rail, pipelines, etc. to Central Asia towards Eastern Europe. And this is where it always looks. So historically, there is a precedence towards that. And if you look at the geographies of both the countries, how there is striking similarity in the sense when they said that we can look at the Indian Ocean region and there is really no competition amongst us. Similarly, for the continental part, the moment Xinjiang and beyond, there is no competition as the Chinese. So naturally, the progression will be towards the continental approach. I wanted to talk about Pakistan, but I think that will take quite a bit of time. And wanted to explain the geographical implications. Its layout is such that it lacks satellite side of the day. And being very small in size and really do not have any kind of maritime role as far as geography is concerned. So they have a restricted role and it always have to live in alliances for its very survival and future. And that's what we see actually happen in the past and it's happening historically, presently also. I also want to talk about the future as far as control of oceans is concerned, and that's control over two oceans. That's a theory which I've heard that I'll share with you. That it says that to be really a global power, a world power, you need to actually control two oceans. So it was Great Britain which controlled not only the Atlantic but also the Indian Ocean region. And they controlled the Indian Ocean region controlled by having outposts in Eden and in Singapore. That's how they were able to exercise control over what they considered as dualism crown. And if you look at the United States, it's enacted the Two Oceans Navy Act in 1940 and built a fleet to control not only the Atlantic but also the Pacific. Chinese, as I said, they're constrained by their maritime geography and they really have to break out of those islands which surround them. That's a problem. And I think the natural choice would be to have control of the Pacific, but more towards the Indian Ocean region. And the activities, what we see in South China Sea, are a precursor to that particular aspiration of theirs. So, having deduced the geopolitical imperatives for India and its adversarial neighbors, let us now example the importance of geography as it exists today in the current context. I think that the rapid march of technology suddenly puts the importance of geography. Some technologies are actually making geography kind of irrelevant. So one is, and especially in context of war and warfare, and that's the kind of subject which I am told to speak. So to have application of force by air, actually. The long-range bombers, aircrafts, your missiles, long-range vectors, they all make geography relevant. You can target things at a vast distance, precision kind of strikes. Similarly, if you look at space, warfare is extended towards space, that again kind of makes geography, which is so important for past, in the history of mankind, it was so important till about a couple of years back, that again stands irrelevant because from space, that provides a total amount of transparency. Similarly, cyber and data warfare, it operates in a kind of borderless, interconnected digital domain where distances, terrain, and boundaries are of no consequence at all. Attacks can originate anywhere in the world to target any kind of a command system. So again, cyber is another domain which has got the geography is not affected. The geography does not affect it at all. Similarly, cognitive warfare, cognitive operations target the human mind and transcend geography by occupying not ground but perceptions. They influence beliefs, erode morale, incite unrest, manipulate leadership, and affect decisions. And human geography, over here, they said that so cognitive warfare does not have, geography does not actually influence it. But maybe the distribution of population, which is human geography, maybe that will have some kind of an importance. But as I said earlier, the geography is important. So all these developments which I've spoken about, that hasn't really taken out complete steam out of geography, and it does remain important in the context of, say, GIS maps or the networks of cables which provide us that internet connectivity, where they are located, your data centers, etc. So some element of geography still remains important. So let me now talk about multi-domain operations and reframing of conflict. So the impact of technology. So we are having a look at, say, what I would be talking is a military strategy, which was largely influenced by geography in the past, and increasingly being eclipsed by technology presently. But the major impact of this technological development, if I were to summarize, is three. One is, I can say, death of distance. Second is demise of surprise, and third is disappearance of offensive maneuver. Because advent of this or emergence of this long-range aircraft, air-to-air refueling, long-range precision weapons, etc. And of late, you see the Russians fire this Buddhistic missile, which is a nuclear power, and also potentially possible nuclear power, and it's hypothetically they can actually go without continuously for a very, very long time. And they have a kind of global reach. So distances don't matter in today's warfare, which was an important element in the right up to 65 wars, which you mentioned, sir. Similarly, surprise is no longer relevant because you can see everything. So because of important battle winning factor, today probably deception may be more important than surprise. So whatever is visible, if you can deceive that, that becomes important. And third thing is disappearance of this offensive maneuver, because today anything that moves is visible, it can be tracked. If it is tracked, you can actually hit that. So that is again, I'm not saying that the basic principles of war in which you say offensive action, that remains. But offensive maneuver out of it, that particular part is becoming more and more questionable. So against this backdrop, the nature of war and warfare itself is changing. Multi-domain operations, integrated deployment of military capabilities across land, sea, air, space, cyber, and cognitive domains. They have actually expanded the aperture of strategy. Future battlefields are not going to be recognized as service boundaries, integration, rapid decision making, and seamless exploitation of information are now key to victory. India's joint doctrine for multi-domain operations recognizes that no domain can be siloed and no service can operate in isolation. Glimpses of what lies in the future actually was visible to a large extent during operations in Route. And classically, these operations were entirely different from kind of war which we fought with General Anil mentioned, the 65 war. So they were in fact, obviously, that blood and glory, that kind of a factor was missing in these kind of operations. So they were multi-domain, they were integrated, They were a combination of kinetic as well as non-kinetic missions executed in a digitized kind of environment with a network. And to some extent, in this particular operation, we also use artificial intelligence to understand future courses of action. So this particular war, this 4-day war, was entirely different kind of war what we will fought against, and it has set new benchmarks for conduct of war in future. India's operational success was predicated upon also business technologies, integrate networks of diverse platforms. We have a plethora of platforms, so indigenous as well as foreign countries are able to integrate all of them together. We've seen how geography influences, strategy and how it's becoming relevant. And now technology is probably taking a front seat and geography taking a back seat in understanding of strategy. We've seen how multi-domain operations are slightly different from all kind of operations that we have fought in past. Now let's take this whole context in what's happening geopolitically and where does India stand. So, as far as the world has transitioned from bipolarity to unipolarity and now towards multipolar structures, global alliances, once designed for ideological contest and containment, are now fluid, shaped by shifting priorities and immediate interests. Again, I would like to quote Tim Marshall, who says that geography doesn't argue, it simply exists. Asserts, reminding us that geography remains a living driver even as technology and shifting alliances change its deterministic kind of hold. So in this context, let's have a look at some geographical realities that face us. First is Indian Ocean region. I think that has emerged the world's primary maritime highway. The connectivity issue, linking the largest manufacturing hub of East and Southeast Asia with the biggest energy producers of the Middle East and the fastest growing consumer market for South Asia and the market for the future, that's Africa. So I think Indian Ocean centrality as compared to the Pacific and Atlantic is going to remain, and whatever we see currently 80% of global maritime oil trade and nearly one-third of seaborne merchandise passes through this ocean, and this is likely to continue. Beyond trade and energy, the region underpins the world's digital and financial connectivity, boasting the darkest web of seabed-based communication cables linking Europe, Africa, and Asia. So that again defines the centrality of Indian Ocean region as compared to Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. So the importance of Indian Ocean is also well understood by bipolar parts like America and US. No wonder Americans from a Pacific command changed over to Indo-Pacific command, and China has also invested heavily in creating new infrastructure in countries like Pakistan and established a network of strong bases and economic ties with countries in the region. And so geographically, I think the future says that Indian Ocean is going to remain very, very important. And as I said earlier, India geographically requires a central position in this particular case. If you look at global geopolitics, India's geopolitical realities are defined by geography, demography, and the strategic environment that surrounds us. It combines opportunities and constraints in equal measures. And some of the important things, if I were to summarize that, India is politically and socially quite stable. It's a vibrant democracy. It has a large population base, and hence it's one of the largest consumer markets. It has a very strong and credible military. And in the ongoing global geopolitical competition, in my view, India is the ultimate swing state, if you will say. The global balance of power can shift should it choose to align with the existing or emerging centers of power. So that I think is the importance of India geopolitical. Hence, the geographic centrality of India lies here. India stands at the crossroad of this contest, here to a geographic legacy of both heartland and hinterland. Geopolitics, as I said earlier, makes us also the ultimate swing state. And India, as I said earlier, geographically, peninsular shape and centrality in the Indian Ocean region will be unmatched. India will also be a kind of an stabilizing force which can protect trade, data quotient, and balance rival parts in the Indian Ocean region. So I believe that India must pursue a wholehearted national strategy which balances both continental security and its maritime ambitions. Indian Ocean strategy should leverage its peninsular geography, island depth, strategic outposts, and diplomatic standing to achieve regional stability and contest external coercion. In the end, only I would like to say that India stands at the confluence of heartland and hinterland, straddling pivotal domains of Eurasia and Indo-Pacific. Its population, technological prowess, and rapid economic growth position is a driver of global demand and innovation. Growing partnerships and interdependency, multi-aligned foreign policy allows us to engage with competitive blocs. Hence, it still leverages technology to both exploit and overcome geography and projects its stabilizing power amid a multipolar world. So it depends on the imagination of a people as to how to leverage all this for India's future and growth. In the heartland and hinterland and throughout the Indian Ocean, India's centricity is not just simply a matter of map, but is a lived reality, a strategic promise, and a beacon for global security. Let's rededicate ourselves to this particular cause. That's all I had to say, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your patience.